The Joe Rogan Experience.
It just really stretches your mind and your imagination to imagine living like that back then. And that these people, while, Rome was being built, the Colosseum, Europe, all these different places in the world, these people were living the same way people lived tens of thousands of years ago right here.
It's crazy. And now it seems like we're so far removed from it, but yet as we talk about it, that romance hadn't left. And even getting a chance to chase a bull elk, there's still some amazing rural wild places out there where you can kind of revisit. And that was the first thing I noticed is all the Native American pictures you had. I hunt a lot with Native Americans, a lot with the Navajo Nation. I've become like family, or they become like family to me. I go out there every year, and the resources they have. I know Cam hunts a lot, as at the Muscalero and different places.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, man. And even sadly, even amongst the natives, some of that culture is being lost with them more. And so we even go out every year and do a hunt with their kids. We take 15 to 20 Navajo youth hunting every year out there with the Navajo Game and Fish. They have a lot of mentors. Gloria Tom, who she's just stepping down, but she was the kind of in charge out there. And we would go and work with people like Jeff Cole and that whole Navajo Nation, the families, and we'd take just their kids, the kids of the Navajo Nation hunting. And sadly enough, they're like a lot of kids in America eating Little Debbie's and playing Xbox, It's like, man, you got 17 million acres in your backyard. Come on, bro. You're supposed to be the damn eagle.
Right.
You gotta fly and dip down. And we got, I'm even out here, it's your room, and me too. I have all kind of Native Americans. My heroes were Native American hunters, like Ishi, who taught Pope and Young how to bow hunt. He's who got him.
Really?
Yeah, Ishi out of California. I think he come back and he basically taught those guys who were doctors. He introduced them to bow hunting. And then Pope and Young, as we kill an elk, we think, oh, is he big enough to go Pope and Young?
Right. Explain to people what Pope and Young is for people who don't know what we're talking about.
Pope and Young is, so basically Pope and Young were two guys that basically just kind of revolutionized archery as we know it a lot of times. I mean, obviously, you throwing around names, you got to talk about Fred Bear and stuff like that. But prior to that, there was an Indian named Ishi out of a California tribe, and I'm not good enough at remembering exactly what tribe that was, but there's a lot of cool information that you can read. Obviously, if you ever get your hands on Saxton Pope and Arthur Young, any books, it's fascinating. Like my favorite book of all time is called The Adventurous Bowman. A friend of mine, Jeff Johnson, who's a writer, gave it to me, and I read it all the time. And even my kid, I read him that book at night, and it talks about their first venture into Africa and when they went there, when they hunted grizzly, when they hunted elk the first time. And so these guys were kind of, based on what I can assume, seemed to be pretty much city slickers who had basically a patient called Ishi who taught them how to hunt. And pictures of him, you can still see him. He looks like he's dressed at a Ted Nugent concert in 1969, jumping off the amps. And so now that's become similar to Boone and Crockett. Pope and Young is an organization that's formed around, celebrating certain animals that are trophy aspect. And if you get say a white-tailed deer that nets 125 inches on the Pope and Young scale, you can enter them into the Pope and Young record books. And every category of species, like elk, bear, caribou, moose, so on and so forth, has that. And so it's just kind of to celebrate a lot of the heritage of archery. And so Pope and Young, a lot of people don't know it, but that basically is the basis of what it come from. But it starts back to, guess what, a Native American, these arrowheads, they passed it on. And so now we're kind of carrying on that same tradition. And so as a student of the game, it's so cool to talk about
There they are.
Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Wow. Look at that.
That's cool. Is there any, can you find, Jamie, is that Ishi? That's
Ishi
Hall of Fame?
and Saxton Pope right there.
There's Ishi there.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine?
So
look at that.
You're learning from the source.
Yeah. I mean, and there's so many amazing stories.
What year was this?
Man, I don't even know. It had to have been in the, I don't know, was it 20s? Or maybe 1900. I know it was early.
You know what's fascinating when you think about what we enjoy? We enjoy archery.
1912.
1912. So that guy, that is like he was alive in the 1800s.
Absolutely.
So he was doing that. Like that's literally from the source.
And there's another thing, and it's crazy to think about this. Another thing I read and heard told, because obviously, you travel around, and it's always trying to figure out, what's fact or fiction. But I'd listened to Casey Means on this podcast. We're talking about our food. Supposedly, Ishi who come in, who was actually living very primitive, but come in, and once he started hanging around and got westernized, quickly got fat because I don't know if Little Debbie's was around then.
No.
It's the only thing I hated about the whole Casey meat, that whole podcast. I was like, man, I used to love a good oatmeal pie. Now I'm sitting here like, I don't know, that glass of milk. Man, should I even partake? But I think he gained a lot of weight and started getting a lot sicker.
And the food back then was so much better than the food we have now.
Yeah. Just around a lot of people, and all of a sudden he was trying to fight probably viruses and diseases and getting an abundance of a certain food he wasn't used to. And supposedly I think he got a little heavier and less healthy just being around.
Probably a lot of grains and sugar.
Probably, I'm sure.
Yeah. He's probably eating mostly meat before that.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Just a fish out the creek and, backstrap out of a mule deer,
The way everybody did for thousands of years.
Yep.
It's just so interesting that if it wasn't for guys like Pope and Young and Fred Bear, I mean, how many people were evangelizing bow hunting back then? I mean, how many people were making it something that was, because as soon as rifles came along, the way everybody looked at it was, rifles are better. You can shoot something further. It's easier to do. You hunt with rifles. But to make that choice, this decision that there's something more connected, more spiritual about archery and bow hunting, if it wasn't for those people that were promoting it, people like Fred Bear, who was so articulate in the way he would describe things and the way he would describe the benefits of just archery practice, about how archery just removes your cares.
Yeah.
Like if you could just concentrate on that target and just practice archery, it cleans your mind. And I find that today.
I do too. It's almost like you go back in time every time, even though we pick up, these new Hoyt bows, you're like, oh my God, look at the technology.
It's a lot more accurate.
It is. It's so much more accurate. And so, it's amazing, and you're just exactly right. It is spiritual, and to think back of where it was to where it is, but then you think about the rifles and the technology we have there. But keep in mind, I'm sure, and those people who are really hunting for substance, absolutely. If we leave tomorrow and we can't go and get us a nice steak dinner, or we can't go to the grocery store and buy us some chicken or ribeye, whatever it is we decide to eat, well, absolutely. If we're like, hey, Joe, your wife and my wife is wanting us to kill a few squirrels, and we're going to have squirrels and gravy, and my wife makes some good biscuits. It's like, why don't, let's leave the Hoyts at home. Let's take a 22 and a 410. Let's just go get us a mess of squirrel.
Yeah.
And so I think probably they looked at it that way, and once that came about, and then it slowly becomes somewhat of a, I hate to even say it as a sport, because I don't look at it as a sport, it's a culture.
It's a discipline.
It's a discipline, but I think to know that we're still going back and celebrating that and still talking about Ishi and Pope and Young and the Fred Bears and what they set forth, and even people like Chuck Adams, who was always one of my heroes.
The original compound, look at that. Up to 50% more speed and penetration.
And that was 66. So I felt like this would have been in the 80s, because
66.
Because I feel like...
wow, that's wild. Price so low, hunters can't afford to be without one. The way they used to market things back then is so funny.
I know. I love to see those old Field and Stream and Outdoor Life magazines.
Yeah. It's just, it's a window into a different time.
Look at that. Can you imagine taking that to Utah to chase an elk in the mountains?
Oh, my God. You'd have to be so close.
Cameron wouldn't even have to tote out a buck on his shoulders. He could just tote that around, probably be as heavy as a whitetail.
How heavy is that thing? Look at it, all
There's
the
no
metal.
telling. All the components and
like,
all cables.
What kind of feet per second are you getting out of that sucker? What is this?
Oh, look at this.
1926. Arthur Young, bow hunting.
It's a grizzly here. They say it's a grizzly.
Oh, wow.
Look at him.
Super close.
Holy cow. I've never seen this, Jamie.
Wow.
Thanks for pulling this up. This is so cool.
1926.
Holy smokes. I bet they didn't even have to buy a license. I bet they just went hunting too.
Oh, yeah. I bet there was no licenses back then. I mean, when did they...
All right, he hit him somewhere.
Yeah, it shows. It follows it up here. But I mean, to film this is even crazy, because this is 1926. So.
Right.
Wow.
You had to be so close with that shitty bow.
No doubt. And man, I tell you what, man, intriguing. Like those guys right there, their books that they wrote, if you wrote those same books now, like if you and I went on a hunt and we said, hey, let's just write an article and present it to Outdoor Life and publish it just as we saw it, which is so cool about what we do here is having a chance conversation and kind of air out anything and everything. And obviously culture has changed the world. I mean, these podcasts. But back then, you know, you had articles. Well, they'd write these books, and it would be so, like, I would read it sometimes the same page 2 or 3 times. It'd be like, you know, Saxon Pope talking about, or Arthur Young talking, yes, I found out, I think it's too far, 70 yards is too far to shoot at a Cape Buffalo. I put 3 arrows in him. He didn't seem hurt. I got 2 in the rump, 1 in the neck. And you're like, they didn't edit this out. It's almost like
right.
It's almost like me and you hunting squirrel. Like, man, I'll tell you what, I don't like them pellets. It's just not.
Yeah.
Those pellets in that air rifle are not. They're just not knocking the squirrels down good enough. Like, oh, you wasn't supposed to put that. Can you edit that out?
Right.
They would just like, okay, let's put this in a book and let's sell it.
Well,
Let's
they were pioneers.